All right, what's happening, folks? I want to do a little piece talking about what I do. I'm a blacksmith. I went to school. Actually, I'm an artist. I went to school, got a little art degree. This was actually going back to school. The degree was cool. I got to look into a lot of different subjects, which actually became very useful to me after I graduated. So I actually did use what I learned. But while I was there, I really wanted to get into metal, amongst other things, and so that pretty much wound up being my main setup was metalwork. So I got to spend a lot of time in the shop, and I got a lot into blacksmithing. Now, as I mentioned, there are a lot of guilds in Tallahassee. There are just a wide variety of old people who still have a very old set of skills. Just you wouldn't necessarily think that you could find those type of things, but you can, and they're here. And that's I mentioned also that's one of the resources that I think that I can provide to people is connections with people like this, because you might be like, oh, I'd always wanted to learn this, that, and the third, but you never had the opportunity to, because you never knew anybody that had those skills. Well, we have a number of them down here, so I can link people if there's like a seminar, or it makes sense to hop on down here. This is probably more so for the people in Atlanta, and also I have some skills that I could teach people as well. But I imagine most of y'all up in with Jersey and the different areas, y'all not it's a little bit far. Anyway, so a lot of this really is stuff I did a long time ago. So it's not great, but I have. Let me see if you can see it right. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to. All right. This is a railroad spike knife. We get railroad spikes, and it's said that they really are not high carbon steel, a real strong steel, but some of them do seem to actually have higher carbon than others. And you got to remember, human beings have been using bladed tools since stones, bones, and they effectively use those tools, effectively survive into the present day with a lot of different stuff. So you want to, if you have the opportunity to get a knife or whatever, make a knife, you want to make it out of the best, highest carbon steels, available, so the best steels available. That's true. But the idea that somehow even an iron knife, flat out just iron and not steel, the idea that wouldn't be effective for a time is you're not thinking about the issue in context with the history of humanity. So iron is iron, and it can be sharpened, and so you have something that's nice. Let me I'm kind of up on something to try to get the distance to really show you what I'm trying to show you, but. Okay, so this is actually also made out of a railroad spike, and I wanted to show you these not because they're really great examples of knife making. The texture on the blade is on purpose. I like the texture because I'll probably be getting out of that now. Now that I understand more about what the edge of a blade is for, etc. But there are some issues with these blades. Made them early on. It's a railroad spike. I just hammered it out like it was a flat piece of metal, and employed some of my little blacksmithing skills, I guess. I don't know if you pass for skills at that point or even now. So it's not a lot of light, I guess, but one of the difficulties with this one, and then I wanted to show you these because I wanted to show you some of the really what you can do pretty quick on. I mean, this took me a total of 40 hours. This is when I was just learning. The blade shape is kind of weird, but it's really not that far off of what could be really a good solid knife, actually. And I learned this. I put this together pretty early on. So you know, there's some problems here. The pins that hold the overall kind of the overall knife handle together. Those pins were steel, you know, or iron or something, and I hammered them all down and stuff like that. And you know, I may be able to show y'all some of this type of working. And really, you need a softer pin. You need a softer metal in here, and less hammer work like this. But anyway, you know, this is something that you can make. I actually, and see, you know, because the railroad spike, it probably won't hold that sharp of an edge. So what I started doing was I actually soften this up, and I use it as a martial arts knife. It's not one of the dummy knives. It's not plastic. You know, it's steel, but it's not gonna cut you. You know, it's not gonna at all. You know, so it's softened, but it's steel. So if you stab somebody or if you catch them with it, they're gonna feel it. You know, so you know, I think it's good for more realistic practice. I think I've shown this before. This is my tomahawk. I did have better skills when I put this together. This is actually a flat piece of steel that was forge welded. That's an old type of welding where you basically weld it right there in your forge. You know, you wrap it around, and then you hammer this part closed. You get it hot enough to where the insides basically glue themselves shut. Now the top of this was welded closed just so that you didn't see the seam and stuff like that with a welding with a welder, but that's not what holds this together. What holds it together is the forge welding process, and that was difficult, you know. But I mean, you have a hatchet, you know what I'm saying? It didn't cost me no whole bunch of money. These are things, you know. I look at some skills, you know, are quick acquisitions. You can go get it and keep it moving. Some skills will take longer, you know, but you're going to be here. You know, you plan on living for the next 5-10 years. So why not, you know, put in a little bit of time and pick up a skill that's going to be very, you know, effective and useful. I like making knives out of wrenches. Some of these designs did come from other people. This one didn't. The nicer looking ones came from other people, but I guess this is almost like a skinning knife type of a deal here. This was before I really knew how to put a really good edge on a blade, but it's still, you know, this I could just go grind an edge on this if I wanted. Now I just keep them kind of as you know, just to remind me of where I've been, the steps that I've taken. This is the blade that I showed y'all earlier. I kind of started grinding it. I don't really have a great grinder at this point, so I want to start doing some grinding with probably a file. And this is what I've been working on this with a file, and it's been a little bit more painful than I thought it would be. But anyway. This, I think I've shown this before. It's kind of hard because of the lighting here, you know, you got a lot of glare, but this is a pretty cool. I like this. This was also a wrench. These are old tools that are some of them real old and no longer have use, so they've been repurposed. Another knife I love the way this fits. I use it sometimes. I didn't really put a good blade edge on this, but I didn't really need to either. But I could, you know. They're more like, for me, they're blanks almost, because then I can turn around and make more like this one, and if I wanted to sell them or whatever. So then, you know, early on, right, working, I had to go out and was going to a class outdoors, and I needed a knife. So this is actually made from a lawnmower blade, and really not that much has been done to it. I mean, I hammered it a little bit. I'm always going to hammer something, but man, boy, that light, goodness. All right, the light is kind of a bit much. Okay. Anyways, lawnmower blade. It's a big, kind of a big long knife. I suppose if you're talking about batoning a knife in the woods and doing some of the bushcraft stuff, I don't know. I mean, maybe a longer, wider blade like this would help, because it's almost more like an axe, but it's still not that thick on the back. But anyway, I don't know that shape is great, but it's just trying to show you stuff that can be done early on, really early on in your process. Let me put the camera down right quick. These two right here are actually from old hay. They're hay rake tines, but this is the big, the big machines that are raking, the hay out of the field, and they're curved like this, flattened on the end, right? And then you make a blade out of them, and it makes a nice little knife there. I mean, it's all metal and stuff. I suppose you could cover it with something to make it not so hard on your hand. And I was all into the forward bending blades there, and that's really more of a chopper type of a blade, so it probably needs to be straighter. But at any rate, I keep it, and these are just type of things that you could get into really early on, in terms of knife making, so. These actually were made in Africa. These are woodworking tools. They were made by an older Numu in Mali. Numu is a blacksmith over there. Well, it approximates a blacksmith anyway. So these are woodworking tools that they have for carving. All this stuff is very, very doable. This is not super hard. I have been interested a long time in finding other black folks who actually are interested in blacksmithing. I mean, anybody, really finding anybody who's interested in blacksmithing at this point is exciting, because there are some numbers. We got some numbers, but it's not a big thing, so it's cool when you can talk to anybody about it. But I don't really see any black people smithing. A few. I've met a few, and obviously in Africa there are tons, but African Americans have kind of left off that tradition, and it's not really with us at this point. I think it's something that we should pick up because it's extremely useful. So here it's kind of hard to show you. These are actually insignia. Anybody who's familiar with the Yoruba tradition would maybe recognize these to some degree. In Yoruba, they're Odu. They're called Odu, and they have this marking along with another marking alongside of it, and they signify things. But they also, when you're talking about in terms of their spiritual tradition and thought process, they hold power, etc. In the Mande world, they call them symbols for Latru, but they're all over West Africa and actually different places in the world, and so they put these symbols in these implements they gave me. And I've gotten real long in the video, but I little wood carving on the back of a hammer. It's probably not very functional, but I said I'm an artist, so some of these things I show them in places and stuff like that. So for me, it's a lot of this stuff for me is connected to the idea that my ancestors did it, and that's part of what makes it significant. It's not just practicality; it's heritage, and identity. This is the type of hammer I use. So I'll etch insignia into my hammers that mean something, and each of them is tied to a theme. So this hammer for me is like this is John Henry, and the other one is Ogun. In Africa, they'll use an anvil face that looks like this big hammer here. If I were to use this, I'd probably fill this with the end of with a piece of wood and cut it off, like a handle, and maybe cut it off, and then put that in the ground. Actually, you probably put it in a piece of wood. You find a way to dig a hole in a piece of wood like that far where my thumb is, maybe even farther, and you bury that wood in the ground so that when you're hitting the top of it, it doesn't push the whole thing down into the dirt, but it pushes this big, maybe 2 feet long piece of wood, maybe 6 inches wide, kind of piece of wood / tree into the ground, and that's not going very far. So that would stabilize it, and then you bury it in the ground, and so you just see dirt, and then you hammer on the surface of this. And so a lot of these smaller blades don't need that much of a surface to work on, and I've seen them work a whole sword on a surface like this, but it was a tourist sword, but it may be possible that larger things can be worked on an anvil like this. So you want a bigger anvil, right? But even the part of the anvil, once you get some skill that you're going to be working on, is going to not be that much bigger than this anyways at any one time. So you can what the cool thing about blacksmithing is you can make it happen. You can use things that you find, especially in this country, and start making stuff, and then one day you get some skill. All right, I done made a super long video. I'm out. Holla.